Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar when we are looking at the inventory opportunities and challenges with the post-COVID market demand trends. We thought about taking this topic because I'm sure by now people have started realizing that the primary sales, secondary sales definitely is becoming challenging. Once the COVID wave is turning down, the entire hype behind increase in demand inventories is going down. So we thought about doing some analysis at our end because since we captured the stockist data, we are capturing the closing stocks, the inventories, the secondary sales. We thought about doing a little analysis and trying to find out if there are certain challenges that the brands operating in certain molecules may face, or there are some opportunities because we are under the impression that the market cannot absorb anything more, but then there may be certain pockets of opportunities which definitely exist and we really need to evaluate. So what we will be discussing today is, I have tried to give this entire presentation in a Excel sheet so that I can use a good Excel dashboard when we are discussing a few examples of molecules. So what we will be discussing in this presentation is the overall IPM performance and the COVID, non-COVID influence therapy performance. Because since the entire discussion nowadays is going in COVID times, this is what has happened. And now that COVID is over, there are inventory challenges, there are demand challenges. So first we will look at the trend levels, then the COVID, non-COVID influence aspects, and then the inventory hygiene, how across different supergroups, how across different molecules, chronic, subchronic, or acute, or in case of certain areas like the COVID, non-COVID influenced drugs, or certain key molecules which are anyways very important molecules in different therapy areas. We are looking at how they have performed. In case of those molecules, do we have any strong opportunities or do we see any strong challenges in the coming months? That is all that we will be looking into. So to start with, I will, the way we always start, we look at a simple IPM performance. So this is something which we have already discussed when we were discussing the performance for the month of January. What we need to see is that majority of the categories are growing with a double-digit value growth. Of course, there are some categories which are degrowing for the month of January, but the degrowth is not a very high degrowth, except for categories like derma. But then it is probably the demand itself has fallen down and gradually will pick up. What we also need to see is how does the inventory look for these categories. So what I have done is I have looked at the inventory trends for the month of January for all these categories. If you look overall for the IPM, the inventory, and what I have also done over here is, yeah. So this is the inventory days and this is converted to months. So if this was the number of 30 days inventory equivalent to 1 month inventory and 50 days inventory equivalent to 1.7 month inventory. So on an average, if I were to look at IPM, the IPM on an average maintains an inventory somewhere close to 1.5 months inventory in the pre-COVID times, that is in the month of January 20. If you see today, the inventory levels that the IPM is showing is around 38 days, which is probably lesser than the pre-pandemic times. Now, when I also try to discuss with some of our key people in the industry, what they said is earlier, probably the most of the incentives were based on secondary sales, and also your primary sales mattered. So there was a lot of push that was happening in the market. But then gradually companies also started changing their strategy and inventory hygiene started becoming very much important in the later part of the year. However, if I look at to what extent the inventory hygiene should be impacted and to what extent my inventory days should be coming down. If I consider for categories like anti-infectives, where in the pre-pandemic time, on an average for the category, the inventory for the month of January was around 50 days, it has come down to 39 days, which is almost 11 days reduction in the inventory. Whereas if I were to look at the growth of this category, the category has grown by 27% in terms of value and 25% in terms of units. Of course, this growth for certain categories like anti-infectives, then respiratory and pain. These are the categories where the growth has been unusually high because there is a market correction which happened same time last year in the month of Jan 21. These categories had shown a significant degrowth. Now, it is not that that degrowth has got corrected and I'm seeing such a robust growth, but then there are other aspects as well. The seasonal trends have come back, the seasonal disease patterns are back, the dip of the last year has got corrected, and the third wave of COVID, wherein people did not really take COVID related drugs or direct COVID treatment drugs, but most of the cases the treatment given was symptomatic. So mild anti-infectives, cough and cold preparations, analgesics for managing the pain or discomfort. This is something which led to, or was also one of the most important parameters for growth of these categories. Because the third wave of COVID, though it was the virus was not a very virulent strain, but it was fast infecting strain. So the number of people that were affected was much more. Now, in this scenario, if you see the inventory days that these categories are having, they have gone down drastically. So when I'm talking about inventory days, what do I mean by inventory? It's basically whatever I'm pushing in the market in terms of primary, how it is getting liquidated to the retailer. So to what extent the goods are lying at the stockist end, the goods are moving to the retailers. Higher the inventory at the stockist end, lower is your retailer pickup. But what we are seeing is the number of days of inventory that is lying at the stockist end has come down to a good extent in some of the categories. Now, if I look at some other categories like cardiac, gastro, anti-diabetic, nutritionals, though number of inventories has come, number of days of inventory has come down, it has not come down that drastically as it has come for anti-infectives and the respiratory segment. Now, these are just numbers that I'm talking, but I think if I were to look more in terms of trend lines for this category, I would get a better understanding of what's happening in the market. Yeah. So overall, if I were to look at the Indian pharma market, what I have done is I have kept very simple graphs. The blue line over here, the light blue line over here gives you the sales in terms of units. The dark blue line over here gives you the sales in terms of value. And these bars, the gray color bars that you are seeing, they are the average number of inventory days. So overall for the IPM in the month of January, the number of inventory days was close to 44. As the COVID wave came into the picture, the inventory days gradually went up. Then in the time of second wave, when the demand was very high and the goods were available, there was a fast pickup of the goods. So overall for the Indian pharma industry, the inventory days came down. In certain categories, obviously, because if you see this is average for the industry. So there was a stock out situation also for a good number of molecules. That is the reason why on an average for the IPM, the number of inventory days came down. And gradually as the COVID wave started coming back into control, the inventory days were back to, the around 39, 40 days. But then if I were to look at my pre-pandemic times, the inventory days were around 44. I can look at it as, it's a good hygiene. It's good that the inventory levels have come down and it really affects my production and distribution chain. That is one way of looking at it. Other way of looking at it, probably there is still a demand in the market. The market is in a position to absorb more amount of primary sales. I'm not talking about dumping the goods in the market, but then if the inventory days come down significantly, are below what the conventional inventory that the market has been putting, there are chances that there may be stock out situation for certain brands, certain molecules, and this is all India average that we are looking. There may be certain states, certain metros, certain pockets of geographies where there may be very low inventories and certain molecules or certain brands may be losing the opportunity. Coming to the acute category, in case of acute category, we see that the gap is a little stronger. In acute category, before the pre-pandemic times, the average inventory days were 46, which have come down in the post-pandemic. After the COVID third wave, they have come down in the range to 36 to 38 number of days. If I look at the chronic category somewhere more or less it is stable. It was 39 days 40 days in Jan 21 and 37 days in Jan 22. And the subchronic category, if I were to look into, this is also a slight reduction. From 48, it has gone to 44. So it is more of the acute category where I am seeing a significant drop in inventory to the extent of 8 days in the overall IPM. Similarly, if I were to look at this picture at a supergroup level, if I were to look at the anti-infectives, overall for the anti-infective segment, where the average inventory days is 50 days, 47, 48, 50, in the pre-pandemic times, if you look for the month of January, the inventory days have come down significantly. It's around 39 days. And also, if I were to look overall picture, this was the second wave of COVID where the demand was very high. The second wave came down, and probably this upward swing is more because of certain hospital anti-infectives, because certain surgical procedures started coming into picture, because of which the high-end anti-infectives were used more. Then if you see now in the month of January, certain amount of some anti-infectives, especially we read about azithral, we have seen azithromycin picking up significantly. The inventories have moved up, sorry, the demand in terms of unit of sale has moved up, but the inventories have gone down. 39 days, not a bad inventory level, but average inventory level of the industry was on a little higher side. If I were to look at anti-infective segment in terms of acute and chronic breakup, I also see this is more driven by the acute segment, and it is less driven by the chronic segment. Anti-infectives in terms of chronic, we hardly have any, but it is majorly the acute anti-infectives that have driven this market. So in general, if I were to talk about the IPM, in general, if I were to talk about the IPM, it is majorly in the acute portfolio that the dip in the inventory days is more significant over a period of time. Then I go to then I will be going to the next table, wherein we look at the contribution of the COVID non-COVID part across the different categories. Yeah. So if I were to look at the COVID non-COVID contribution, in case of anti-infectives, to a great extent, many of the value is majorly contributed by the COVID impact. Now, I would say direct treatment of COVID, it would be more of your favipiravir and remdesivir. Other drugs were more of managing the situation. Anti-infectives like azithromycin did play a role, but then COVID-related were limited. And now, if the COVID-related drugs are growing, not genuinely all of them are growing because of COVID treatment, but then there are other seasonality aspects also which are playing a role. This was the value ratio. And then if I were to look at the value and the unit growth of both the COVID and the non-COVID aspects, you will see anti-infectives, overall, there is a good amount of growth. Value growth is also there. And unit growth for COVID-related part is also quite significant. Similarly, if I were to look at the respiratory pain analgesic segment, the COVID portfolio is showing a significant growth. Now, in the respiratory segment, in the pain and analgesic segment, if I were to talk about what are those drugs which fall in the COVID, in respiratory, it would be more of your cough and cold preparations. In pain and analgesics, in fact, paracetamol and paracetamol combinations have skewed the market totally. In fact, this one molecule or one molecular combination has grown by close to 100% in one full month. So that is the type of demand that has been, the market has seen that type of demand in 1 month for this market. And again, it's like the third wave plus your vaccination drive, wherein a little discomfort and you are advised to take a paracetamol tablet. Similarly, if I were to look at some other therapy areas, in terms of unit growth, it is quite modest. But then in terms for the COVID-related parts, the anti-infectives, the respiratory and pain analgesics, the growth is quite significant. Even the nutritionals for the month of January have shown a good double-digit growth. Then we look at the inventories for the COVID and the non-COVID portfolio in the same category. So if I were to look at how did the inventory trends behave for the COVID and the non-COVID category, you will see that anti-infectives, both for the COVID influence as well as non-COVID influence, the inventory days have come down significantly. Same in case of respiratory and pain analgesic segment. So the inventories that are being managed against the demand that is there in the market, that may be a challenge in terms of I may have a stock out situation if in certain pockets I'm not available, or it may be an opportunity So I need to identify the places where there is a stock shortage, either for my brands or for competitor brands, and ensure that my drugs or my brands are available in that particular area. Now, instead of looking at this table and just keeping on talking about tables, I thought about taking certain molecules as an example. And what I've done is I have selected certain key molecules in some of the categories, and we will be discussing around those molecules. If this is actually a product, we have true stock as a product, which gives you a complete inventory analysis. So this graph or these graphs that we have worked on are a combination of our sales audit and as well as the stock capture audit. So what we have done is I have selected certain molecules in each of these categories. I have taken little bigger molecules, high value molecules, but then if I were to look at, do we have the inputs available for all the molecules? Yes, because we have done this analysis for the entire spectrum of the IPM. Each and every molecule of the IPM, we have studied the primary, the secondary, and the inventory trend ratio, which I feel everybody would feel it quite beneficial, especially now January is the closing time, or in the next few months that people will be seeing challenges in pushing the goods or meeting the sales requirements. The demand, we are assuming that the demand is going down, but then we really need to understand how much can the market absorb in terms of primary sales. So we will be looking at certain molecules in anti-infectives. We have taken in antibacterials. We will take as amoxicillin plus clavulanic acid, azithromycin, and cefixime as examples. So if I were to look at amoxicillin plus clavulanic acid, I'll just read a few molecules so you get an understanding of how we are discussing or how we are going ahead reading these graphs. So if I were to look at amoxicillin plus clavulanic acid, in the time of COVID days, the demand went down. The inventories were on a higher side. April, May, June were the peak periods of COVID-2 wave. And in this period, because of good number of hospitalizations, the amoxicillin plus clavulanic acid, in terms of unit consumption, it went up. The inventories went down. After the second wave, when actually number of hospitalizations due to surgical procedures improved, the inventories went down further. And now probably we are going back and looking at a normal trend line. But then against inventory of around 42 days that the market used to keep, for this molecule, we are having an inventory of 31 days. So just 1 month inventory that this molecule is seeing in the market today. Now, when I'm talking about this molecule, I'm talking about this molecule as an average at an all India level and average for all the brands that are available in the market. Then it is possible that it is only a few molecules, the big ones, which are available in the full stock that needs to be available. There may be certain brands which have not seen this opportunity and they may be understocked in certain pockets, or they be understocked at all India level because they may not be sensing the opportunity that is coming in their way. So that's the reason why this dip of inventory from 45 or from an average of 38 to 40 days, it's come down to 31 days, is definitely an opportunity that one needs to look into. After amoxicillin, if I look at the second molecule, which is the most talked after molecule, which is the azithromycin, how does azithromycin look in the market? Somewhere, we keep on getting a feeling that yes, azithromycin is in high demand and it's moving fast in the market. But let us look at azithromycin inventories in the market. On an average, the inventories of this molecule used to be around 38 to 41 days. So around 40 days inventory. And over here, in the month of January, when all of a sudden the demand for azithromycin has moved up significantly, the inventory of azithromycin in the market has gone down. So I'm 100% sure that there are many pockets in the states, in the different states of the country or different geographies in the country, where there is a out of stock situation for a good number of brands. There may be a few brands which are legacy brands, which are market leaders who are managing the situation. But then this picture of 22, which is an average for the molecule, definitely tells me that in many places, the goods are just not available. After azithromycin, we look into cefixime. So in case of Cefixim also, we are seeing a same story where the average inventories used to be between 39 to 45 days. For the month of January, the inventories have gone down significantly. And if you look at the upward tick in terms of consumption, the consumption of Cefixim molecule as such has moved up in the month of January. So it's possible that I'm assuming that the inventories which I managed, or the inventory levels that I managed in the month of November, December, the same amount of stock would have sufficed in the month of January, but that was not the case. The consumption that happened in the month of January was much more than what had happened or what was assumed in the month of November and December. Then we have other molecules like in the antiviral segment. Obviously, in the antiviral segment, we have favipiravir, we have remdesivir, but then these molecules to a great extent have brought their inventories down. So if you look at remdesivir, till the month of December, the inventory levels were on a very high side. But now as the demand is dying down, if you see for the month of January, the inventory has come down significantly. So probably this molecule has managed the challenge of dip in demand. However, we have seen a slight uptick in the demand in the month of January. Not sure how long this demand would stay. Then we come to favipiravir. In case of favipiravir also, the molecule definitely saw a challenge over here in terms of high inventory because of falling demand. But if you see in the last 1 month, the inventories have been brought down significantly by this molecule. Then we look at antifungals, wherein we look at itraconazole, fluconazole, and clindamycin plus clotrimazole combination. If you look at the itraconazole market, if you see typically the seasonality of the market usually tells us that the demand in the market starts falling down from the month of January, which we have seen in Jan 20, we have seen in Jan 21, and we are also seeing this downward trend of the market, which actually starts from somewhere from the month of November, December, Jan, it comes down. Similar trend we have seen November, December, Jan, it has started falling down. So as against that falling demand of the market, if I look at the inventory days that I'm having for itraconazole versus 47, my inventory days have moved up significantly. So here it is not that, I may have a missed opportunity of products not being available, but I may be having a problem of, little higher level of inventories than what the market can absorb. So this was itraconazole. Then we look at fluconazole. Same thing for fluconazole. Again, it's a downward trend that the market is showing. And as against the inventories of 45 days or 48 days in the month of January, my inventories are slightly on a higher side. So probably players operating in the market need to understand that the demand is slowing down. And I will not be in a position to liquidate much. So the extent of primary push that I should be giving in this market should be limited. Clindamycin plus clotrimazole market, if you see, the inventory levels have come down. The inventory levels have come down from 49 days to 44 days. Whereas if you look at the unit consumption, if I just look at what was the unit consumption in the month of January versus the unit consumption now, more or less the unit consumption has not fallen down drastically. But then as far as the inventory maintenance is concerned, as compared to the pre-pandemic times, the number of inventory days has come down by 5 days. So this may be a good sign, may not be a good sign. It's basically you are the market experts. You may be in a better position to judge. But then what we feel is at least observing these trends lets us know, where are the opportunities, where are the challenges. This was about the anti-infective segment. If I were to look at the next segment, which is the cardiac segment. Okay. Overall, if I look at the cardiac segment, in the cardiology segment, more or less the inventory levels have not been a challenge. Overall, if you see, the inventories have maintained a steady inventory level. If you remember, the cardio-diabetes segment was the segment which has stagnated or degrown to a certain extent in the COVID times. And probably the players who have also played smart, they have not unnecessarily pushed the goods in the market. Wherever there was a demand, or wherever there was a repurchase, they managed to maintain the repurchase levels. And if you see in the cardio segment, not much upward or downward or excessive swings in the inventory level have been seen over a period of time. Now, in the cardiology segment, obviously there are two categories: the COVID cardiology segment and the non-COVID cardiology segment. So, if I were to look at the COVID drugs in the cardiology segment, it would be more of your blood thinning agents, enoxaparin. They are the ones where the demand has been little on the higher side, and we need to see how the demand is coming down versus how the inventories are being managed. Even in those cardio COVID drugs, where they were high-end drugs and the demand moved up significantly. But if you see now, the average inventory days for even those COVID drugs is very much in control and can be managed. However, I really need to look little deeper in the cardio segment as far as molecules are concerned to understand exactly what is happening over there. So if I look at certain molecules in the cardiology segment, we have taken telmisartan and combinations. So let us look at telmisartan and so I've just taken some of the bigger categories. So as far as telmisartan is concerned, a bigger category. However, if I were to look at the inventory trend, the demand is also has been quite stable, slight decline over here, but the inventory days are also quite steady. They are ranging in the range of 28 to 30 to 33 days. They have neither gone up significantly nor come down significantly. Or if I were to look at telmisartan plus hydrochlorothiazide, another combination over there also, it is quite a steady trend. So as far as the non-COVID related cardiology segments are concerned, you will realize that to a great extent, the inventory hygiene has been maintained quite well. However, we also need to look at certain categories like enoxaparin. Enoxaparin as a molecule, which is today at a MAT January level, a 1000 crore molecule, it has grown by almost 100% during COVID times. It was hardly a 500, 600 crore molecule, which is now a 1000 crore molecule. So let us look at the inventory trend of enoxaparin. How does it look? Yeah. So if I were to talk about this molecule, for this individual molecule, inventory trend is genuinely a concern, because when the times were good, in fact, they must have also faced a stockout situation in the month of April, May. The consumption, which is this dark blue line, has been excellent. But now, since the COVID second wave is over, third wave is much into control, no hospitalizations, no significant complications, the demand for the molecule has gone down. But then when I look at the inventory days, it essentially tells me there is a lot of stock lying in the market. So which the market is not going to absorb, or the market may find it challenging to liquidate, especially if I need to look at the concerns of short expiries or being in the right place. So definitely this one molecule may have a challenge in the cardiac category. So let us look at some other molecules which are used. Which had, which were in high demand during COVID times. If you look at rivaroxaban, same thing. In the peak COVID times, the demand was up. But now if you look at the inventory of this molecule, the inventories are very high. So the goods that are lying in the market, probably there is a challenge that this molecule or people operating in this molecule may face. Then let me look at this is more or less in control, not a challenge because the inventories are more or less in control. Dabigatran. Same like enoxaparin, even dabigatran has a challenge of inventories, huge inventories of more than 2 months lying in the market, around 2.5 months inventories lying in the market. Some places almost coming close to the close to 3 months in a few places. Now, this is an average for all India, average for all brands. So there will be certain states, certain pockets. If the marketing team or if the promo sales team is not very aggressive, there must be a huge amount of stocks lying in certain pockets. So that is a major concern area that one needs to look into. Then we look at let us go to rosuvastatin and atorvastatin combinations, planes and combinations. I will not take all molecules. I'll just take a few molecules across categories. Rosuvastatin, 45 days inventory. Now it is a 37-day inventory. If you look at the average pickup, if you see steadily from the month of June, the pickup has improved, but the inventories are falling down. Not a very alarming situation, but need to look into it because probably I may be losing some amount of opportunity. Similarly, if I were to look at atorvastatin, in case of atorvastatin, do I see a similar picture? Also, atorvastatin, if you see gradual, there is an upward movement of unit pickup. But then in terms of inventories, my inventory days, they are coming down. Also, if I were to look at atorvastatin plus fenofibrate combinations, again, same thing. In the last few months, the pickup has moved up. Inventories, I would say this inventory doesn't seem to be a challenge because here it was very high inventory overall for the molecule, which is gradually coming down and which is coming into control. That was about the cardio category. Next, for the rest of the categories, I will take a very few molecules because gastro segment, the PPIs, I will take the rabeprazole, pantoprazole combinations. I will just focus on the PPI segment and see how the PPIs have performed or are the, yeah, gastro segment. In fact, we may see some challenges. Yeah. So, say we have domperidone plus omeprazole, wherein the inventories are, no, domperidone plus omeprazole, I'm not seeing a challenge. But let me see domperidone plus pantoprazole. Yeah, domperidone plus pantoprazole, if you see, in the last few months, overall for the molecule on an average, at an all India level, the inventories are less than a month. So this is overall a challenge for the market because it's like it's good to have a less than 1 month inventory. But if I were to look at this, it's an average for all the brands and all the geographies together. So there are some brands and some geographies which are missing the opportunity. If I were to look at plain esomeprazole, inventories are fine. Let me look at omeprazole plain. Omeprazole plain also the inventory looks fine. Let me look at pantoprazole. Pantoprazole, somewhere the inventories are lower. They have gone to less than 30 days. On an average, when the industry in the pre-pandemic times was managing to have an inventory of 1.5 month, inventory of less than 1 month may seem to be a concern because inventory of less than 1 month in key metro cities may be a okay phenomena because replenishment can happen faster. But in places where there are far off places where you genuinely need to maintain that 1.5 month inventory, those places may be facing a challenge. After this, I will go directly to the next segment, which is the anti-diabetic. Yes, anti-diabetic would be an interesting segment, especially because DAPA lost its patent and how did it impact the other molecules. So in anti-diabetic, let me just take one of the bigger conventional anti-diabetic and then move to the DAPA part. So if I were to look at oldies without gliptin, so I'll go to the glimepiride plus metformin, the biggest combination. Yeah. Glimepiride plus metformin, a very nice inventory hygiene maintained. Now this again, some of the major brands which operate in this segment, they have managed a very nice inventory level because there are very key brands which are almost significant chunk of this market. So probably this is a reflection of their performance as well. Now let me go to the SGLT2. How DAPA loss of patent has also first of all impacted DAPA itself, and then the rest. So if I were to look at the dapagliflozin market, the molecular market, after October, once the DAPA lost its patent, we will see there is a nice upward swing of the DAPA players or the DAPA consumption in the market. Probably many players entered in the market at this period of time, because of which the inventory was on a higher side. But then after, many of the liquidation has also started. So this is a good balance that we are seeing, that the unit consumption is going up and the inventories are becoming manageable. Now, dapagliflozin got probably permission a little earlier, whereas DAPA plus metformin, I think it received a permission little later. That's the reason the same phenomena that we are seeing for DAPA is getting repeated little later, in later months, for the DAPA plus metformin market. However, for the DAPA plus metformin market, even though I would say the permission came late, but now we are in Jan 22. So in Jan 22, the inventory levels that we are seeing in around 50-54 days seem to be slightly on a higher side. Now, because of this dapagliflozin, there are other molecules which may have got impacted. Remogliflozin, which was launched 2 years back. If you see, DAPA was launched somewhere over here. And after DAPA generic brand started picking up, remogliflozin actually started having a negative impact, wherein the unit consumptions came down significantly and the inventory levels started moving up. Similarly, if I were to look at remogliflozin plus metformin market, the inventory levels still are on a very high side. Though I'm not seeing a downward trend, the combination is still moving in an upward way, a healthy upward way in the market. But if I were to look at the inventories that are being maintained in the market for this molecular combination are more than 2 months inventory. Now there are many players in the vildagliptin market. So let us look at the vildagliptin market, how the vildagliptin market is behaving in terms of inventories. More or less a steady inventory level of 40 days is maintained for the Vilda plains market, and also around 30 days. Now, if it is a Vilda market only, why the difference that in combinations we are able to manage a 30-day inventory, and in plains we are able to manage a 40 days inventory? This is something which the internal players also need to look at. After the diabetes segment, we go to the nutritionals. The nutritionals is a very cluttered market. I will not look into all of nutritional segment. I will just look at very limited number of molecules in the nutritional segment. We just take some examples of methylcobalamin combinations, vitamin B and D3. The vitamin segment. So if you look at methylcobalamin combinations, more or less inventories are well maintained. Second is we look at the vitamin B complex. This is basically a COVID related thing, wherein the demand went up vitamin C only. Again, over here, inventory is well maintained. If I were to look at vitamin D3 preparations, polycalciferol, over here also inventory is well maintained. So basically, the multivitamin preparations, the demand now is gradually, subsiding, going down. But at the same time, because when we used to interact with a good number of players, especially the bigger ones, what we realize is there is a lot of inventory lying at many places. But then if I were to look at the overall demand to inventory ratio for this category of products, it really doesn't seem to be very alarming for me. At least at a top level, it doesn't seem to be alarming. So probably there are still pockets or geographies in the country where the demand for this product is there, and I can push the goods in those areas or geographies. Then coming to the respiratory segment. In the respiratory segment, we will just focus on we will take some preparations in the cough and cold, like paracetamol, the bigger ones, paracetamol, phenylephrine, and chlorpheniramine. Over here, if you see, this is one of the biggest molecular combination in the cough and cold preparations. If you see over here, the demand in the third wave of COVID has moved up significantly in the month of January, but the inventories for this category has come to just 22 days. It means in for many of the brands and many of the geographies, there is a stock out situation, or there is a challenge in managing the brands wherever there is a demand coming at the retailer. Then I will be looking at, say, I will take at the levosalbutamol plus ambroxol. Same thing over here as well. 28 days, still I'm having 1 month's inventory. But if you see in the month of January, the demand has moved up and my inventory levels have gone down. So it is these category of products where, there is still a good amount of chance that, I can push my goods and manage to get good business. Then coming to the pain segment, in the pain segment, we will just focus on the outlier molecules, which is the paracetamol. I will not take anything beyond paracetamol in the pain segment because, in fact, for paracetamol itself, there is a very interesting finding. Pain segment. So if you look, we kept on reading news about, Dolo, Calpol, the consumption has moved up. But let us see what is the situation in terms of inventory and, availability. If you see, while the consumption of many paracetamol preparations went up significantly in the month of January, the availability or the inventory is just less than 30 days. So probably for the people who are operating in the paracetamol market, in the January inventories itself tells you that, there is a significant dip in the availability that we are seeing in the market today. So if there is, and this would actually continue to stay for a little longer time. I wouldn't say it's a 6-month phenomenon, but for a little longer time, where, still there is some discomfort, there is some vaccination discomfort that is seen. Paracetamol may still continue to have that type of demand in the market. After this, we will go directly to the derma segment. I'm just taking few molecules from all the segments so that we cover all the segments and look at the inventory trends. Now, derma segment is one segment where we really do not see that much aberration across. So if you look at the inventory levels, I'll just take two molecules, clobetasol, neomycin, and miconazole. In this category, the inventory days are unusually low. Neomycin and miconazole. Yeah. In this category, the inventory days have been falling down. Also, the demand is going down. So still a 30 days inventory doesn't seem all that challenging. However, if I were to look at the mupirocin market, in case of mupirocin market, again, we had very high inventories at this point of time. Overall, if you see, in the COVID times, it is the derma category which fell down significantly. And now gradually the demand is moving up. If you see the unit consumption at this point and the unit consumption same time last year, we have really moved up. And the inventories seem to be more into control. The last two categories that I would be looking at is the neuro category, the opthal category, and the stomatologicals category. So in neuro category also we look at limited molecules. We will take the biggest levetiracetam molecule, the anti-epileptics, and pregabalin. In case of pregabalin, inventories are good. Demand is also steady. Inventories were 50 to 50 days. They are now around 40-45 days. So 1.5 month inventory, which we keep on talking. And the biggest molecule, again, if you see, the inventories are at a nice steady 30 days, 1 month inventory, 1.2, 1.3 days inventory, which has been steadily managed and maintained for quite a significant amount of time. Then we go to the stomatologicals category. In the stomatologicals category, in the opthal, then we go to the opthal category. In opthal category, if you see, more or less, there are many molecules. I will take mofloxacin, which is relatively bigger molecule. Though the demand is moving up significantly for the molecule, the inventory levels are on a relatively higher side. Then if I were to look at some other molecules like mofloxacin plus dexamethasone, sorry, I will take it nepafenac NSAIDs. Inventory levels had moved to a very high side because if you see, the opthal category had degrown significantly in COVID times. That's the reason why the inventories were on a higher side. After May, June, once the COVID wave has subsided and things have started coming back to normal, the inventories are back to their normal trends or are back in control. Over here it were 44, 48 days. Now they are back to 43, 45 days. And the last category that we take is the stomatological categories, wherein we look at in the COVID, it was the povidone iodine preparations, the mouthwashes, which moved up significantly. Now, interesting phenomena is we keep on feeling that, okay, now COVID has died down. So povidone iodine may not have that type of demand, but that is not the case. In fact, we are seeing a stock shortage in this category. I think that is the mouthwash, povidone iodine. Yeah. So if you look, typically in the second wave, the demand had gone up, things started subsiding, and the inventories went to around 40 days. But in the month of January, when again that Omicron thing started picking up, the demand for my mouthwashes, povidone iodine mouthwashes also went up significantly. As against that, if you look at the inventory days for this preparation is just 19-20 days, which is an insufficient inventories. The as low as there were just 3 months in the past, March 20, April 21, and May 21, when we had seen such a low inventory. So if you are seeing this type of inventory and this type of demand pickup that has happened, probably there is a stock out situation for many brands in the market or in many pockets of the states in the market today. So net, what we have tried to do today is we have tried to look at, if I look at the inventory trends and if I compare the inventory trends with the unit consumption at a molecular level, forget the brand and state level, even if I do it at an all India molecular level, I come to know where are the opportunities and what are the challenges that I may face in the market today. So if I were to look at key takeaways, so while it is a good sign that the inventory levels are being brought down to a significant level in post-pandemic times, one needs to watch out for missed opportunities wherever the demand remains the same, but inventories are below the conventional pre-pandemic levels. Certain COVID treatment specific drugs which may not have any demand or have a very insignificant demand or a seasonal pattern, conventional demand, they may have to realign their production distribution to pre-pandemic times. A further analysis of inventories at a state level, molecule, brand level would provide a clarity on the hidden opportunities and challenges. Because whatever analysis I have done just now, it is more of a all India and a blanket analysis. But further drilling down of your brands, of your state, which our product to stock can definitely provide. it would actually give us a better window, or a more clarity of how do I manage my sales, how do I protect myself from certain challenges that I may face in the market today. So that's all from our side. And since we discussed a very limited number of molecules, you can reach out to our client servicing people who can work out a demo with you for some more molecules of our interest. Because of paucity of time, we really couldn't take you through all the therapies and all the molecules. But whatever we presented today just gave you a glimpse of what is it that we can work out for you in terms of analysis. So that's all for your time, and thank you very much for connecting with us. And please feel free to reach out to us, and let's see how we can work together with you. Thank you.